Now here's a question for you. Why is Superman so super? Superman's most superpower is that he's incorruptible. That old saying that power corrupts does not apply to him. Thanks to a strong, wholesome upbringing, he's able to resist that temptation. He can do pretty much whatever he wants because of his powers, but he still chooses to do good. He's the ultimate good Samaritan, and his own free will and the ability to control himself are large parts of that equation. Now, looking back to the earliest incarnation of Superman in 1938's Action Comics #1 and 1939 Superman #1, both by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, Superman is far from fully developed at this point in time. The process of molding him into the iconic figure we all recognize today had only just begun. Nevertheless, several key enduring elements are present in those early stories. Let's focus a little more on Superman #1, which is the more complete take on that original concept. It both reprints and adds to the original story from Action Comics #1. Right on the first page, an important part of his origin is laid out, and that's his Earth parents teaching him to think about other people. He should hide those powers at first only because other people might be scared, but when the time is right, he must use those powers to help people in need. He carries those lessons into adulthood and becomes Superman. Now, Superman #1 is very episodic, and one of his very first goals in that issue is finding a job at the Daily Star, not yet the Daily Planet. And even with finding a job, he's not thinking about personal gain, he's thinking about positioning himself to help other people. And the same thing with his secret identity. He voluntarily chooses to act weaker than he is so he can help more people in the long run. There are no supervillains in these early issues. There are just people doing bad things and putting others in harm's way, and a stronger man steps in and ensures that justice is not forgotten. So the first Superman exploit in this issue involves a mob rushing into a jail to lynch a man who has already been arrested and is already behind bars. So without knowing anything about the man's guilt or innocence, Superman leaps onto the scene, no flying yet. He leaps onto the scene and demands that the mob disperses, that this man's fate will be decided in a court of justice. Right from the beginning, Superman is acknowledging and setting boundaries. Certain lines must not be crossed. In this particular case, the man winds up being innocent, but even if he wasn't, doesn't matter. It's not how we do things. Superman proceeds to acquire a confession from the real killer and exonerate the innocent man. To do so, he certainly bends the law to an extent that the later Superman might find unacceptable, but it's all in the service of directing justice and the law back onto the proper path. He's not letting any guilty person off the hook no matter who it is. And in this story, the killer turns out to be a young woman, but he's not cutting her any slack. She even says, I'll get the chair for this, and he's all like, well, you should have thought of that before you killed the guy. So yeah, that's also kind of different from today's Superman. But the point is, justice doesn't care who you are, justice cares what you did. So in these early episodic adventures, Superman teaches humility to the rich and the powerful, or people who like to think they're powerful. And sometimes he's sneaky and manipulative as he goes about it in ways that would be considered out of character for today's Superman. But the important part not to overlook is that the early Superman is focusing his efforts on people who are causing physical harm to others. He is not going around and lecturing anyone who's acting like a jerk or saying mean or wrong-headed things. No, he's focusing his efforts on people whose actions are physically harming others, such as warmongers who are keeping a war going just to sell munitions and no greater purpose than that, or a man who owns a mining operation, but he's too cheap to ensure the physical safety of his workers. Superman uses the minimum force necessary, and he even gives some of these people an opportunity to learn the error of their ways and correct their own behavior. So Superman, even this early, less powerful Superman, was certainly strong enough to impose his will on anyone he came into contact with. But he set those clear boundaries for his behavior. There's this interesting contradiction. Superman serves as this juggernaut of justice who will not be stopped, but he's very disciplined in how he goes about it. No one is making Superman do anything. No one can make Superman do anything. That's a responsibility he has to assume for himself. He has to control his own self. And that's exactly what he does right from the beginning. Thank you for watching.